So the most fundamental principle in Meleches Shabbos is Meleches Machsheves. Everything depends on Meleches Machsheves. Some people think that this Hagdorah Meleches Machsheves in the Torah is in the context of Shabbos, and it is not. It's not in the context of Meleches Shabbos, but rather Meleches Mishkan. And the posuk is in Parshas V'Yakel. So in Parshas V'Yakel, we find the posuk L'kol Meleches Machsheves, and the question is, how do we define Meleches Machsheves? Because in many sugyas in Shas, we find the fundamental idea is that whatever fits into the category of Meleches Machsheves would be a Malacha D'Oraisa. Whatever cannot be defined as Meleches Machsheves will not be a Malacha D'Oraisa. And therefore, it is so important to define, so what is Meleches Machsheves? So before I want to teach you my Yesod and give many examples to substantiate this Yesod, I just want to make a general comment with Darkei Talmud. Every concept must have one Hagdorah. Mi'amois gedoyle harashoyim ad achroine u achroinim. Gedoyle yisur oisik in Hagdorahs. In the definition of any halacha, in the definition of every concept, every mitzvah, whether it's a mitzvah say or a mitzvah lois, and anybody that listens to my Shiurim on a steady basis knows that we are oisik a great deal in Hagdorahs, because if you have the right Hagdorah, then you understand what the halachas are and what comes out of this Hagdorah. So we could only suggest one Hagdorah to a concept, but a concept may have many characteristics. I don't know how to say characteristics in Yiddish. In Lashon Kodesh, it is ma'afyenim. So a concept may have many characteristics, but it must have one fundamental Hagdorah, one fundamental definition. So what is the definition of Meleches Machsheves? So let me first make a short introduction. B'divrei haGemora v'harashonim, Chazal make use of Meleches Machsheves in three different areas. So the posuk in Parshas V'Yakel speaks about Bitzalel and Oholiav and Chachmei Lev that performed all the Meleches HaMishkan, L'chol Meleches Machsheves. What does it have to do with Shabbos? Iskish Meleches Shabbos LaMeleches HaMishkan. We know, how do we know which are the 39 Meleches? Obis Meleches Aboam Chosalachas. That's the Mishnah Shabbos, the Fine Gimel. How do we know which are the Meleches that are prohibited on Shabbos? It is not Aloha Moshe Messinai. We do not find a list in Torah's Moshe or in Nevi'im Ksuvim. So Chazal teaches us in Shabbos Memtes, all the Meleches that were essential and necessary by Komes HaMishkan, those are Meleches Shabbos. And we learn that from a Hekesh. Iskishu Meleches Shabbos LaMeleches HaMishkan. And therefore the concept of Meleches Machsheves, which we find by Meleches HaMishkan, also defines Lametes Meleches Shabbos. So what we learn from the Mishkan is not only which are the Lametes Meleches, but also the very fundamental concept of Meleches Shabbos. Just like the Meleches Shenasu b'Mishkan were Meleches Machsheves, Lametes Meleches Shabbos are not defined as Meleches only if they are Meleches Machsheves. And Chazal use this concept in three different ways. First of all, to define what can be considered a Melecha and what not. So when Chazal need to decide which are Lametes Meleches Shabbos. So on one hand, we learn from the Mishkan, but there were many other things that were done in the Mishkan which are not in the list of Lametes Meleches. besides the Lamites Meleches, that were all necessary by Kumas Mishkan, many other things were done by Kumas Mishkan, and they're not in the list. And why not? Because they're not Meleches Machsheves. This is found in Beit Sedav Yud Gimel. But in my Ksovim, in my Sefer, I brought additional sources. Look it up, check it out with Yedidi Reb Shlomo. Beit Yud Gimel is the very first time in Shas we find the two words Meleches Machsheves, which is an interesting phenomenon. In the entirety of Masechet Shabbos, Taf Kuf Nun Zayin, 156 pages Meleches Shabbos. Meleches Eruvin, which fundamentally deals with Hilchas Shabbos. Masechet Psochim. First time in Shas we find the term Meleches Machsheves is in Beit Sedav Yud Gimel. What's the context? The Gemara asks why is Hamodas Areima, which is putting a bundle of tefuah together. Why is it defined Mar Malocha Lagabe Tumas Ma'asos, and it's not defined as a Malocha regarding Shabbos? And the Gemara says it's not Meleches Machsheves. So, and obviously in the Mishkan, just like they needed to be Zereya and Koitze, the Samemoni, probably they brought together from the fields the Hamidu Arema, but it's not defined as a Malacha. Even though it is considered Gemara Malacha Lagabe Ma'asos, it's not defined as a Malacha Shabbos. Why? It's not Meleches Machsheves. So what we learn from this Gemara is when Chazal need to decide exactly which of the Malachas performed by Kumas Mishkan would make it into the list of Lamites Malachas and which would not, the key to that decision was Meleches Machsheves. In Sifri, Chazal ask, why is Knivas Yerek and Shtifas Kalem not defined as Malachas and Shabbos? Washing dishes. Knivas Yerek. So if you cut a Yerek to very small pieces, it's Toichen. But obviously in the Mishkan they cut some ammonim. Why ain't these considered Meleches Machsheves? Why ain't these considered Malachas and Shabbos? Because they're not Meleches Machsheves. So these are the two sources in which we find that Meleches Machsheves determines which of the various acts performed by Kumas Mishkan are considered Malachas Shabbos. I just want to mention the Gemara in Bava Kama Beis Medalef. Hach tahave b'mishkan chashiva kora leyavois. Two perushim in the Rishonim. What do Chazal mean? Hach tahave b'mishkan chashiva. One perush is, it is only the chashel malachas that were performed in the Mishkan that are considered Malachas Shabbos. Not everything. So that pshat and Bava Kama Beis Medalef fits in perfectly with the Gemara Beit Yud Gimel Amud Beis. The second area in which Chazal deal with the concept of Meleches Machsheves is in 14 different sugyas. 14 different sugyas. And the common denominator, the tzad ha-shoveh shebeheim, is that if a malach is performed in a certain fashion, which would not be defined as Meleches Machsheves, can it be an Issa D'Oraisa? And I will go through part of that list, not all the 14, but we will give 5, 6, 7 examples just to have you achieve clarity in this sugya. And the tzad ha-shoveh between all these makoros is the deficiency of what cannot be defined as Meleches Machsheves. Because Meleches Machsheves not only determines which are the Meleches Machsheves also determines the way in which one performs a Malacha. Is it Meleches Machsheves or not. And if it's not Meleches Machsheves, there could be no Issa D'Oraisa. Third category is, in most sugyas, I've mentioned 14, Meleches Machsheves is a ptur, but in some sugyas, Meleches Machsheves is a chiyuv. If not for the concept of Meleches Machsheves, we would say he's potur. It's not the way you do a malacha. It's not defined as a siyasa malacha. But because it is Meleches Machsheves, he would be chayiv. So usually Meleches Machsheves determines, if it would be any other avein in the Torah, it would be chayiv, but Shabbos is potter because it's not Meleches Machsheves. But sometimes we say the opposite. If it would be any other reason in the Torah, it would be potter. But the Shabbos is chayiv because it is Meleches Machsheves. So before I give you the key and the definition, let's embark on our short journey. And I want to start sharing with you various different sources. Dover she'ein mischaven. And I'm sure you're going to deal a great lot with Dover she'ein mischaven. One of the most important yesodis, not only in Hilchos Shabbos, but in all the Avedas Shebetoira. So it's a machlokes Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon. Reb Yehuda is chayiv and Reb Shimon says potu. But Tosfos in various different sources in Shabbos. In Shas, Shabbos Mamalaf Omid Beis Yom Alamed Alad Omid Beis, Tosfos says, by Shabbos even Reb Yehuda would agree it cannot be an Issa D'Oraisa. Regarding Kol HaTorah Kula, Dover she'ein mischaven, according to Reb Yehuda is chayiv, according to Reb Shimon, mutar. But by Shabbos even Reb Yehuda would agree cannot be an Issa D'Oraisa because it's not Meleches Machsheves. Meleches she'ein tzricha legufo. Shabbos daf ayin hey omed aleph. Tosfos says, why is it potter? Once again, it's not Meleches Machsheves. So just in a nutshell, the kids and imers, what's the difference between Dover she'ein mischaven and Meleches she'ein tzricha legufo? Dover she'ein mischaven, a person is aware he's doing the malacha, but he has no interest in that malacha. He gets no benefit out of the malacha. The classical example is goyrer odom kisei mite v'stavso, dragging a bench in the sand and the mud and the dirt. So obviously he wasn't born yesterday. He knows that probably it's going to make an impression, but he has no need for that impression it'll make in the dirt. So that's a little shimsam. He's aware he's doing a malacha, but he has no interest and no benefit out of that malacha. What's a malacha she'ein tzricha legufo? He does derive benefit from the malacha, but the benefit is not from the ikar malacha. It's an indirect benefit. When you dig a ditch or a pit, the malacha is the ditch, the pit, but he doesn't really want to use that pit or that hole in the ground. He just needs earth. So he is deriving benefit, but it's not benefit from the etzem hamalacha. It's a side benefit of an indirect result of the malacha. That's Meleches she'ein tzricha legufo. And then we have the concept of misasek. And misasek is not only a Tosfos, it's a Gemara meforeshes, Sanhedrin Samach Beis Umid Beis, and Krisis Yutes Umid Beis. What's a misasek? Nischaven lagbia es a tolush, v'chotech es a mechubar. So a misasek derives benefit from the malacha, but he's not aware that he's doing the malacha. So I'm giving you very clear hagdaras. Misasek has interest. He lacks awareness. Dover she'ein mischaven has awareness, but he has no interest, no benefit. Meleches she'ein tzricha legufo is somewhere in the middle. He has awareness, he has a benefit, but it is not benefit from the etzem ikar hamalacha, but it is the side result. And all these three are potter because it's not Meleches Machsheves. If we would stop right here, the most reasonable Hagdorah for Meleches Machsheves would be Maloshen Machshava. Because the tzad hashova between Dov Hashem Eschav and Meleches Sichel Agufa and Misasek, in all three, there is a deficiency in his kavanah. But we don't stop here, and we move on. Mekalkel b'Shabbos is potur. Why? Gemara Fareshes Chagigi Yudam Beis. Because it's not Meleches Machsheves. By Mekalkel, there's no deficiency in kavanah. He knows what he wants, and he is going to achieve exactly the result he wants. And he is aware he does want to derive benefit. And why is he potter? Because it's not Meleches Machsheves. Kil achar yad potter b'Shabbos. And this is fascinating phenomena. Nowhere in Shas do we find why kil achar yad potter b'Shabbos. I don't even remember whether any of the Rishonim in Masechet Shabbos explain why kil achar yad is potter b'Shabbos. Divrei Torah aniyim b'mukom echod v'ashirim b'mukom achar. You need to learn Even HaEzer sometimes to understand halacha in Hilchos Shabbos. Even HaEzer Kuf Chav Gimel. There's a discussion whether you could write a get b'yad small. Both the Beis Shmuel and the Chelkas Mechoykik ask regarding Shabbos, koise b'small potu. So why is a get that was written b'yad small a kosher get? So both the Chelkas Mechoykik and the Beis Shmuel, Roshei HaMedabrim be'Even HaEzer, both explain kil achar yad b'Shabbos is unique only to Hilchos Shabbos because it's not Meleches Machsheves. Has nothing to do with Ksivas Aget. So yes, the Posuk says because of La Sefer Krisis. So regarding Ksivas Aget, Ksiva B'Smol is definitely considered Ksiva. Shabbos is different, not Meleches Machsheves. So before going on, let us stop right here and ask, so what is Meleches Machsheves? Kil achar yad and Mekalkel have nothing to do with Machshava. There is no deficiency at all in the person's intention or in the way he achieves his goal. The deficiency is only ba'ofen asiyas hamalacha. So the basic definition of Meleches Machsheves is an onkelos. Onkelos and Rashi were the two greatest meforshim of Teres Moshe. Without Targum, onkelos and Rashi, lo imotzonu yodeinu v'ragleinu. Between the two, 1,500 years transpired. But onkelos and Rashi are the kings. And they are the most important meforshim to understand Teras Hashem Temima. Targum onkelos in Parshas V'Yakel. Meleches Machsheves Ividas Navan. Rashi Beitz Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Meleches Machsheves Meleches Umnis. Loosely translated, Meleches Machsheves is the work of a craftsman, the work of a mumche. So the work of a mumche, of a craftsman, has many characteristics, but the Hagdorah is one. Meleches Machsheves is not Maloshen Machshava, but rather Maloshen Chashivus. And Meleches Machsheves is the work of a craftsman. Because Betzalel and Oholiav, Kodesh Baruch Hu nosen b'libom chochmas leiv, and they did whatever they did b'komas Mishkan in the most proper, efficient, beautiful manner. And that is why so many different halachas are all associated with Meleches Machsheves. Either it is Meleches Machsheves or it's not Meleches Machsheves. If it's not, no Shiur and Shabbos. If it is, Shiur and Shabbos. And therefore, Meleches Machsheves is so fundamental. So when Chazal need to decide which malachas that were performed and were necessary by Komas Mishkan would be considered a malacha, not all of them, as we learn in Beitzah, as we learn Shtifas Kelim, Matzos Amito, Knivas Yerek, are not defined as a malacha because they're not characterized as malachas umnis. So when a umin does a malacha, he knows exactly what he wants to do. And he's aware of what he's doing. And he achieves his goal exactly in the fashion that he planned. And therefore, malachas is a dovah shem ischaven. He had no attention, that's not malachas umnis. If he wasn't aware that he's doing a malacha, that's not malachas umnis. And then there's another concept I didn't even mention before, and that is nases machshavtoi. And that's a sug in Shabbos Tzadik Zayin Umid Beis. Nischaven lizroik b'tzad zeh, v'holach b'tzad achar, poto b'Shabbos. He threw daradamas b'shus harabim. But he wanted to throw right, and the ball went left. The pitcher knows where he throws, and the ball gets exactly where he wants it to go. And therefore the Gemara says, that's not the way a craftsman would throw. So he had intention. But the result was not exactly the way he planned it. That once again is not Meleches Machsheves. When a craftsman does malacha, he does a good job. So if you call the person to fix your fridge or your air conditioner, and he broke it more than it was before, obviously you're not going to pay him. That's not a mumche. That's not what you expect of a professional. So mekalkel, there's no deficiency in his kavona, but that is not Meleches Machsheves. And when a craftsman does a malacha, he does it in the best fashion, not kelachayad, not in a strange way. So whatever cannot be defined as evidas umnevan, as meleches umnes, would not be considered Meleches Machsheves, and therefore there could be no chiyuv on Shabbos. And there are many additional halachas all based on this same idea. So let me share with you an interesting story and a psak of the Shiurim. The Shiurim was the gewaltige chadav. Minhag Poilin was that people used to carry on the ketanim. And ketanim used to take their teles and shiur. They used to bring the chont to shiur for the kiddush. Two great gedolim going back more than 200 years reject this minhag. Rebbe Kiva Eger and the Mishkenes Yankov. Shalas Teshuvas Chedush Harim Siman Gimel. He has a spark of genius to be miyashiv minhag poilin. And he says, yes, Kotten Weiss al Das Oviv is an issa d'oraisa. It's not merely an issa d'rabbanan. It's not only a question of chinuch. You're not allowed to have a cotton do a maloch al das oviv. But the Chidush argues that is only if the only reason it's not a d'oraisa, it's just because he's a cotton and it's not a bar chiyuv. But if that malacha is not Meleches Machsheves, then there would be no Issa. So Shiurim argues based on the Gemara Shabbos Daf Hey. So as you know, by Meleches you need Akira v'Hanocha. You need to pick up the chayfetz in one rishus and put it down in the other rishus. Whether you're moitze mishus hayochad rishus harabam or you're machnes mishus harabam rishus hayochad, you need Akira and Hanocha. So the Gemara says if a person lifted an object in rishus hayochad, but when he lifted that object, he didn't plan to take it out to rishus harabam, but rather put it down somewhere else in his house, in his private domain. And then he decided to take it out to Shus Rabim, he's not chayiv. So the Gemara says, it's actually a Mishnah in Kalim, but it's also about Mechul Dafyud Beis. Cotton Leslie Machshava. Only a Machshavta and a Keres Meterich Masav. So the Shiurim argues. When a cotton picks something up in one rishus and takes it out to rishus harabim, that's not Meleches Machsheves because cotton ain't lo machshav. And maybe when he picked up the object, he didn't plan to take it out to rishus harabim, but rather put it down somewhere else in the house. You'd pick up a sitter at home, you could put it somewhere else, or a talis, or a chont, or whatever it is. So because the Gemara says on Chulin Yod Beis cotton ain't lo machshav, would not be defined as Meleches Machsheves. And if it's not Meleches Machsheves, there would be no Isra al Yedei Ketanim. It's a Gavaldig Chiddush. I don't want to go in at length. I'll just tell you a fascinating story. There's a very famous picture of the Imre Emes walking with an entourage. The basis soil, his great son, who was the Gerer Rebbe after the Imre Emes passed away, he's standing at his left. And the Pnei Menachem, as a child, is walking right next to his great father, the Imre Emes, and he's holding the Rebbe's spodek in his hand. And that L'choyre proves that even up to the days of the Imre Emes, Minhag Poland was still Mekuyim. So obviously it's Shabbos because the Imre Emes is wearing his spodek, and he's not carrying the spodek, but rather his son, who was a child, is carrying the spodek. That proves that the Imre Emes relied on the psak of the Chidush Shiurim against the Bekiveng and the Mishkan and Siantif. For many years I said, no, it's not a raya at all. We could prove nothing from this picture. Because the Beis Yisrael standing next to the Imre Emes is wearing a hat and not a spodek. So it couldn't be on Shabbos. So probably they were going to a bris or a sheva bruchas or a family simcha. And that's why the Imre Emes wore a spodek. So it's no problem that his little son, the Pnei Menachem, the Pinchas Menachem, carried that spodek. If it would be Shabbos, then the Beis Yisrael would wear a spodek. Many years ago I said this shiur in Antwerp. After the shiur, a young man Gerechosed approached me and he told me his grandfather was present when that picture was taken. And it was Shabbos. And his grandfather remembers it was a non-Jewish photographer that took that picture. And Sunday morning, all the Hasidim were on top of him. They came to a shop and they bought that picture. So it was Shabbos. You know, I needed to hear this from Clay Rishon, so I went to visit his grandfather because I wanted to be sure that I hear this with my ears. And his grandfather, an altogether chassid, he no longer is with us. And he told me, yes, he remembers it was Shabbos. So why was the Beis Yisrael wearing a hat? So he told me something fascinating. This picture was taken in Marienbad. Marienbad was a resort, and the Imre Emes was makbid that the Hasidim in Marienbad should not wear spodeks. It wasn't a ger, it was a resort. And Gedolim, and many people used to go to rest. They used to go for vacation to Marienbad, to Carlsbad. And the Imre Emes was makbid not to be too obvious, not to have such a high profile. And that is why the Pinchas Menachem is carrying his spodek, because he was makpid, that Hasidim should not go and Shusarabim with their spodeks. So yes, this picture does prove that the Imreim is followed. The ruling, the Chiddush of the Chidusharim to be Yashiv Minag Poilan. However, I know that the basis on Yerushalayim was makpid, that Ketanim should not carry. So going back to the concept of Meleches Machsheves, Ividas Umnevan, Meleches Umnes, the work of a craftsman, and therefore there are so many different halachas, which l'chayra are not the same, but they all boil down to the same question: is this the proper way a mumche, a professional, a craftsman would do a malacha? And this brings me to concept number 3. We know that Grome b'Shabbos is not an Issa D'Oraisa. That's a Gemara for Esher Shabbos Kuf Chof Omid Beis. Lo yisasu kol malacha ksiv asiya asra Torah hu Grome Sharia. Grome would not be an Issa. But then there's another sugya in Bava Kama Samach Omid Aleph. Libu v'lib seruach. If a person stoked a fire, but the fire wouldn't spread, only because there was a wind, and the wind made the fire spread. Benizokin is potter, because it's grome benezikin and grome benezikin potter. So the Gemara asks, Zoyre v'ruach Messiah, so in Shabbos is chayiv. So what's the difference between Nizikin and Shabbos? If you stoke a fire, but the fire wouldn't spread without the wind, then you bear no responsibility. That's a grome benezikin. So when you perform a malacha, which is zaira, in English I think it's winnowing, and the way this malacha was performed in days of yore is, there was a taroivis of psoilis and oichel after the disha, after the wheat was crushed by the feet of animals, and then you threw it in the air, and the wind blew away the psoilis, because that was far lighter than the kernels of grain, which were heavier, and they fall down. And that was a way to be boirer oichel metoich psoilis. So why is zoyre chayiv? You're taking advantage of the wind. Why would it be different than a zikin? Rav Ashi says, Shani Shabbos the Meleches Machsheves Asr Torah. And Rashi writes, Meleches Machsheves Asr Torah v'harei naseis machshavto. And therefore, there would be a chiyuv. So this is an example in which Meleches Machsheves is not a tool, but to the contrary, it's a chiyuv. By nazikin is potok. Because when you take advantage of a natural force, a natural source of energy, like the wind, you bear no responsibility. It's not your doing. It's only a grama. But in Shabbos, it is Meleches Machsheves. And to me, this is so appealing. Because who was the very first human being, the very first person to take advantage of a source, to discover a natural source of energy? Who was he? Or the Marishan? Chazal say in Motzei Shabbos, it was dark, it was cold, he took 2 rocks, banged them together, and he discovered fire. And he put on a fire. So Odom Harishon was the first to discover natural sources of energy. And since man was born, B'Sheshis Yemei Bereshis B'Yom HaShishi, man realized that he's not very powerful. He always tried to take advantage of natural sources of energy to achieve his goals. And that is Meleches Machsheves. So regarding Dinei Roitzeach, regarding Dinei Nezikin, he's a Groma Poto. But it is Meleches Machsheves. So mills were built on running water, on rivers. Even today, huge power plants take advantage of waterfalls, of the awesome power of running water to turn the turbines and to produce electricity. We have windmills in the entire world. So man is taking advantage, utilizing the wind, solar energy. So that definitely would be defined as Meleches Machsheves. Because for the same reason that Mekalkel is Potter and Kalachi Yad is Potter and the V'Shem is Chaven is Potter, Groma would be Chayev if it is Meleches Machsheves. So maybe at another opportunity, we will delve deeper into the concept of Groma B'Shabbos and explain, so what is the difference between Bava Kama Samachom Medalef and Shabbos Kufchesom and Kufchofom and Beis? But what I just try to explain is, it all depends on Meleches Machsheves. In 14 sources in Shas, Meleches Machsheves is a ptur. In 7 sources in Shas and the Rishonim, Meleches Machsheves is a chiyuv. I just touched upon 7 or 8 of the pturim and one of the chiyuvim. And then in 2 or 3 different sources, we find that Meleches Machsheves also defines what can be considered a malacha and what cannot be considered a malacha. So the key is these 2 words, Meleches Machsheves. So Meleches Machsheves would be characterized in many different ways. But there must be one definition. And the definition is, in the words of Targum Onkelos, Evidas Umnevan, in the words of Rashi, Meleches Umnis. If it cannot be defined as Meleches Umnis Potul, even though in other halachas in the Torah it might be chayiv. And if it is defined as Meleches Machsheves chayiv, even though in other areas of Torah, he would be potter. So, hafoichbo v'hafoichbo dekulabo. So this is the most fundamental yesod in Meleches Shabbos. And many sugyas are based on this fundamental yesod and this basic understanding of what is Meleches Machsheves.